The case that shook America. The execution of Sacco and Vanzetti. A century-old injustice. We're still repeating. Imagine being sentenced to death, not because of what you did, but because of who you were. Nearly a century ago, that became the grim reality for two Italian immigrants whose names still echo through the annals of American injustice, Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti. Their execution remains one of the most controversial moments in U.S. legal history, raising haunting questions about how justice, or the lack of it, plays out when prejudice holds the gavel. Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti were not hardened criminals. Sacco was a skilled shoemaker, and Vanzetti worked as a fish peddler, both immigrants from Italy who fled their homeland seeking better lives in the United States. Yet, in 1920, they found themselves in the crosshairs of the American legal system, accused of a violent crime that would seal their fates. On April 15, 1920, a payroll guard and his assistant were gunned down during a robbery in South Braintree, Massachusetts. Weeks later, Sacco and Vanzetti were arrested for the crime, despite flimsy evidence. What followed was a trial not just of two men, but of two ideologies. Sacco and Vanzetti were anarchists at a time when the U.S. was gripped by fear of foreign-born radicals. The 1920s saw America caught in the throes of the Red Scare, a time of intense paranoia about communism and anarchism, often targeting immigrants. It was in this charged atmosphere that the trial of Sacco and Vanzetti unfolded. The trial was a spectacle of prejudice. The presiding judge, Webster Thayer, reportedly referred to Sacco and Vanzetti as those anarchist bastards. Witnesses gave contradictory testimonies, and key evidence, like bullet ballistics, was inconclusive at best. Yet Sacco and Vanzetti were convicted and sentenced to death. Their execution on August 23, 1927, despite widespread protests and doubts about their guilt, sent a chilling message. In America, you could be condemned not for what you did, but for what you represented. It's easy to look back at the case of Sacco and Vanzetti with shock. How could such a miscarriage of justice have taken place? But have we really moved past the biases that condemned them? Fast forward to today, and the echoes of Sacco and Vanzetti's case are unmistakable. Bias, whether rooted in race, religion, or political beliefs, continues to shape courtroom outcomes. From the racial disparities in sentencing to the treatment of immigrant detainees, marginalized groups still face an uphill battle when seeking fair treatment under the law. Take, for instance, the high-profile cases of people of color disproportionately sentenced to death row. Studies show that defendants of color are more likely to be sentenced to death if the victim is white. Similarly, the rise in anti-immigrant sentiment and Islamophobia in the post-9/11 world mirrors the fear and scapegoating of the 1920s Red Scare. The case of Sacco and Vanzetti isn't just a relic of the past, it's a mirror reflecting ongoing problems in the American justice system. Their story reminds us of the destructive power of prejudice and the dire consequences when justice becomes entangled with bias. In a world where the echoes of their trials still resonate, one must ask, how many more Sacco and Vanzettis are out there today, waiting for justice that never comes? As we reflect on this dark chapter in history, the question lingers, have we learned anything, or are we still willing to let prejudice write the verdict? Don't forget to follow for more stories like this.